I am very happy now to welcome in Jonathan Lovitz to the show. Jonathan, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it so much.
Great to be with you, man. Hi to everybody watching. It's a real privilege. Thank you.
It's a great privilege to have you on. And, you have done so much as far as advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community, working in and out of government on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, especially in business, working for the NGLCC, the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, also within the Commerce Department during the Biden administration. So it's great to have your insights and knowledge here. And given that sort of impressive career and impressive resume that I've only partially run down there, talk about how your journey sort of led you to be a champion for economic empowerment for LGBTQ plus folks.
Oh, well, thanks, man. That's very, very kind. I am the luckiest person. I've joked for years that I am so fortunate to make my day job and my gay job the same thing for so long. Look, we are all privileged to have identities that help define who we are, but sometimes those identities also define what we do. And I am really lucky that in my career, which began in entertainment and media, progressed simply by being out and vocal about things that I care about, to be able to turn that into a full-fledged career in communications, political advocacy, DEI work, you name it, in support of not just LGBTQ people, but one of my favorite things about this work is that I get to remind everyone every day, we are women, we are people of color, we are veterans, we are immigrants. There is no such thing as a fight, particularly in America right now, that doesn't immediately intersect with LGBTQ people. So making sure that our voices are heard, and as you said, our economic strength is respected, is invaluable in moving us forward. I've been in advocacy, particularly on the economic side, for nearly 20 years. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that red or blue, everybody sees green, and it's the quickest way to get to strength for the pink.
That's right. I love that. I absolutely love that, because it's true. I mean, there were so many, and this was, sort of a recurring theme during the campaign on the side that did not win the campaign, but that there is so much more. We have so much more in common than the things that divide us. And I think that's so important to emphasize right now, especially since things are kind of going the way that they are going on an administrative standpoint in the federal government. I mean, I assume you would agree with that.
I would. And I think it as we saw, whether it was the Equality Act or other pieces of civil rights legislation, moments like this not only underscore how much we have in common, but also bring some of the best collaborations and what some might consider strange bedfellows together, because so many of us have seen these fights before. We know how to win. We know the winning playbook, and we're willing to share that with our partners, because especially right now, if they're coming for us on a Monday, they're coming for another community on Tuesday and another community on Thursday. So either we link arms and fight for a common good, or we give up. Those are the two options.
Yeah. And I feel like I saw, I don't know if it was a meme or something the other day that sort of alluded to that same kind of concept, that, okay, it's like we've taken care of these people. Now who's next? And it's like there's always somebody next on the list. And that being said, a lot of LGBTQ plus people, and I know that this is something that I've experienced in my life previously, thankfully not now, with my job, my position, and my many different roles here. But a lot of LGBTQ plus people face unique challenges in the workplace. They face unique financial challenges due to things like workplace discrimination, wage gaps that are still there. They're still a thing. They haven't gone away. Lack of generational wealth a lot of times as well. What are some maybe policies or initiatives that you think could help maybe close some of those gaps and really help, just LGBTQ plus people really and truly just catch up to everybody else by and large?
Well, it's a great question. I think one that speaks to, we take such pride in our solidarity and our visibility in so many ways in the community, whether it's the visible demonstration of pride flags in public spaces or just identifying who we are with our teams and our staff. But I think, honestly, one of the most powerful lessons from all of that is if you wouldn't hide one place, don't hide anywhere. And that includes in the economy. We have tremendous power right now, both as consumers, to use our dollars in the way that we would use our vote at the ballot box and on any other year. And we're seeing that play out as some companies' stocks are plummeting while others are soaring. We saw that recently when we were reminded that not all chicken nuggets taste the same. Some taste like they hate you. So why would you give your hard-earned money to use it, to give it to a company that's going to use it to harm you and people you care about? And it's never been easier to spend smartly and spend effectively by checking things, whether it's the HRC Corporate Equality Index or its parallel index from other organizations that support women and veterans and people of color, et cetera. But to your point about cultivating our generational wealth and using it for good the way so many other communities do, we're playing catch up, but we are, as we always do as LGBTQ people, doing it with, I think, rockets on our roller skates, because we are not just playing catch up. We are, in fact, moving entire industries and models forward as it comes to things like wealth development, insurance, long-term planning, whatever it might be, because we're demanding, one, parity with other communities, but also a recognition that some of our own struggles and idiosyncrasies in building capital are unique to us just being queer people. And that's why I think there are tremendous opportunities at companies to keep elevating inclusive opportunities to meet with lenders or advisors or whoever they might be that speak to you from your community. You don't need a gay financial advisor to make your money any more secure. But when you have that initial meeting and you have to have some frank conversations about health and family and babies and all these things, speaking to someone who gets it can already take so much pressure off and help you get to a much better place. And I think that's true of really anywhere we put our money or our time, which is, quite frankly, I think our most valuable investment that we have. We are a reflection of what we do. And if you're using your money or your skills or your network, whatever it might be, to push advocacy, to push for candidates, to push for just a good way of life for you and your family, that is a way of using economic advocacy in just as powerful a way as marching in the streets.
Yeah, it really can be. And that's the thing. I think people, there are a lot of different ways that you can advocate, that you can, make your voice heard. And as you said there, your dollar, where you spend your dollar is a very powerful way to do that. Especially, we live in a capitalist system. And so that is just, kind of capitalism 101 is, where you spend your money matters, basically. And so that really is really huge. And one of the things that I just sort of wanted to ask as well, kind of related to that and related to corporate America right now, is we've seen this landscape of so many corporations under this new administration pulling back on DEI programs, pulling back on, things that have been in place. These are not new initiatives. These are not things that just, somebody, to use a phrase, and I guess pun intended here, woke up one day and started. These are initiatives that, I remember when I was in high school, and, I'm in my 40s. When I was in high school and I had a summer job, there was like a DEI, like celebrating our diversity course that we all had to take. This was in the mid 90s. So it's not a new thing. Why do you think so many corporations are capitulating to the current thing that's happening in DC? And what do you think are some things that maybe people can do? Obviously, spending your money in one place rather than another is one of them. But is there anything else that we can do to advocate for specifically things like diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, let's be really clear about what those attacks are. It is easier to make people afraid than it is to make good policy. And so while you're distracting people with lies about people taking your jobs because of who they are, what they look like, you are actively working to dismantle things like Social Security and other safety nets that everyone in the country cares about. But it's easy to keep you distracted when you're worried about that one trans person who's going to steal your job, which, I think one of the best things we've heard lately is that there are more kids who have measles in red states than there are trans athletes in the entire NCAA. So being able to keep scale about what is being said about us versus what is really happening is, I think, one of the things that we all as advocates, is just people existing in sort of this confine right now, have to be very vocal about. DEI programs have been given a target because it's easy to do. You don't know the people who are behind it. You just know that the sign on their office door. And so by othering them, it's reverting back to the other side's playbook for how we got around marriage equality. They were trying to say, these other people want something special and weird and gross and different, as opposed to the way that we won, which was your fellow American, your family member, your friend, your kid's teacher just wants the same life that you have. And why would that be strange to ask for? And when you remove sort of the otherness from other people, we get back to a place of yes, and get back to a place of collaboration. And I think these companies are really reckoning with are, as you said, is the training module or the webinar or the once yearly town hall on diversity actually doing us anything? Or is actual programmatic work, policy shifting going to matter? I have my own consultancy and I encourage a lot of LGBTQ people out there. If you've got a voice and you've got skills you believe in, start something. It's the best way to get yourself out there and get it certified as an LGBT-owned company. And one of the ways that really benefits you is being able to get your foot in the door with these places to say, hey, I can help you get the target off your back while not compromising what you stand for as a company. To your point, since many of these companies began adapting inclusive policies in the 60s. And so, 60 years later is not the time to blow them up. It's the time to rethink them. And some of these companies that I've been advising have been saying, look, let's say it's a $250,000 spend to march in Atlanta Pride. And I said, if you have to choose between putting your logo out there and being a target at Pride, or putting that $250,000 towards scholarships for young people, or making sure your healthcare plans are still inclusive of PrEP and transition services or whatever it might be, spend the money there. The actual policy implications of that are much more beneficial for attracting, retaining, growing your best talent and keeping them safe, healthy, and alive than necessarily seeing you in the Pride Parade. That is well and good, but your employees can still march. Your community will still be there to fill the void. We need you to do what you do best, which is run a great business. And part of that is being cognizant of the lessons, supposedly in the White House and other places here in Washington, we're being governed by experts in business. Well, they're ignoring the lessons of the last 50 years of business, which is diversity is good for every single aspect of your business and the economy. And that turning your back on communities not only hurts you internally, but is absolutely disastrous to you in the marketplace. We're looking at you, Target. So we as community, we as LGBT people in our community and our allies have a very long memory. We remember those who take the strong pivot and do better in a beautifully, inclusive and welcoming light, i.e. Barilla and some of these companies that have had a total 180. But even more so, we remember the people who swore they had our back in March, but are nowhere to be found in June. And I think, again, not only is this important to LGBT people, but everyone's watching this. Our allies have just as much skin in this game because, again, if you're kind of remove your policies towards LGBTQ protections one day, your workplace benefits for women and their financial parity are going to be gone by Thursday. And, the DEI office, the boogeyman on that floor that was, ripping up resumes of straight white guys, or so people think, is actually the people who make sure that your wheelchair can get into the building. Are the people who make sure that, I think about a case important to the Commerce Department where the secretary asked for ideas in an LGBTQ roundtable to make things more inclusive. And a trans member of our staff said, we have 300 bathrooms in this building and none of them are single gender. And she said, well, that's amazing. I'm so glad you told me that because I pee in my office. So had I not had the workers' perspective of the other bathrooms that you use, I wouldn't know what to do. And what that also led to was a very frank discussion of, a single gender, single occupancy bathroom isn't just for trans people. That's for a guy like me who has anxiety attacks in the middle of the day and just needs a place to go, a lactating mother, someone with a disability who might need a little privacy or safe space to do what they need to do. So that's equity, is making a change that actually lifts everybody and not just a targeted group.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, one of the lessons that I have learned over the years, as a gay man is the difference between equality and equity.
Yes.
Equity is realizing that not everybody starts off in the same place with the same, privileges and all of the things. So lifting people up who aren't at that same starting point, just to that starting point, just so that everybody then can, have an equal shot at life. That's really what equity is all about, and just the very basic terms of it.
Yeah.
And Jim, I mean, it's a great, and speaking of lessons learned, what you had just said made me think about something else as well. I mean, we've got a generation now of young LGBTQ plus folks who have grown up really with a lot of social acceptance out there, who have grown up in an environment where, Obergefell, the marriage equality decision is now almost 10 years old. And so for most of their lives, these young people's lives, marriage equality has been a thing. And I sort of can't imagine that in my own life, like the majority of my life having been where LGBTQ plus equality was more prominent in society. But I think that sort of to see the silver lining, I guess, around a really big dark cloud right now, for me anyway, is to be like, oh, well, maybe this brings out the fight in that generation and says that, oh yeah, that we do have something to fight for. This fight is not over. And these rights are rights that could be taken away at any point in time. I mean, it's so important. Like, we grew up in an era where marriage equality wasn't even thought of as a possibility. And so now this new generation, I feel like maybe it lights a fire a little bit, right?
You're absolutely right. And I think one of the great things that particularly younger workers and members of the community have is, they have found as too many of us had to do, finding community the analog way, they have never had it easier to find each other and to find resources and healthcare and access. But they, to your point, I think are missing the fact that can be turned off at any moment. And it again is why in teaching our history is so important, where corporate ERGs do such an important role in helping bring in speakers and such that can speak to history and collective power, because they lose sight of the fact that, we landed on the moon in 1969, the same year Stonewall happened. That's still 3 years before the American Medical Association said gay men like you and me are not mentally defective. That's 5 full years before a woman could get a credit card without a husband. And as someone who just served openly in a presidential administration as a gay man, I was in high school before the laws that said I could have a security clearance, should not have a security clearance, were repealed. And in fact, in the Biden administration, we did a celebration of out LGBT appointees in the Eisenhower building, which was an amazing piece of irony to be here out proud and celebrating in a building named for the man who signed the Lavender Scare laws that said none of us should be here at all. So keeping that sense of history is so important, and also being aware that we're shaping a future now too, and that we have obligations, especially those of us in our 40s and all like we are and above, who realize we lost an entire generation of mentors who are supposed to be here. So not only are we having to step up, we're having to remind the entire generation after us just what they have now and how precious that is. That, laws for equality are written on tissue paper. And the real difference is how they're applied and protected.
Yeah, it's so important. And those are, lessons that I think a lot of us are learning in real time these days. It's so important to keep that in mind. And, we talk about history. It's very, very recent history, but we also need to keep our eyes on the future as well. And speaking of future, everybody is, hopefully going to be at a point where they can retire someday. Of course, the show is Tied in Retirement. And so, I know you have worked a lot with LGBTQ plus small businesses and small business owners, and you've advocated for them, as we've been saying, quite a bit for a couple of decades now. So that's obviously been very important work. What in that work have you found maybe are some key financial or retirement planning sort of steps that entrepreneurs should be taking? Excuse me. I will edit this out.
She is. No, please start over. That will totally done. I get it.
Still got the crud in my throat here. All right, here we go. So put a marker in there. All right. So what are some, key sort of financial and retirement planning steps that entrepreneurs should take, even early on in their careers? I think, I often talk about when I talk about retirement planning with my clients, when I talk about retirement planning just in general for educational purposes on the show, I sort of use the analogy, when's the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Now, so starting as early as possible is a good thing. But what are some things that those entrepreneurs should be doing either right now or, several years ago, if they could go back in time?
I mean, you're spot on about the tree analogy, and I use that myself. I think that is so important for people to realize the best day to begin investing in yourself is day one. And I think particularly as LGBTQ people, we are inherently entrepreneurial because we've had to be the entrepreneurs of our own lives from day one. We've had to weigh risk. We've had to weigh reward. We've had to weigh strategic partnerships. Will they be safe for us, et cetera? And those as true in our social as they are professional lives. And so applying those same lessons to your business, to your financial future is incredibly important. I think about my own journey pre and post being married and the conversations I had with financial advisors and planners where, you have to be very real about, are you planning to pass on a business? Are you planning to have kids? Are you planning to leave, bequests behind? Helping know what you want to achieve in the future sets you up for great planning and success right now, and also lets you set up how flexible and risk averse or not you're going to be in both saving and spending over the next few years. One of the things that I think is also phenomenally fascinating about this moment we're in is, you mentioned succession planning earlier. That's a concept our community never had until just a few years ago, where the first generation of LGBTQ business owners is now passing their business on to potentially their LGBTQ children or senior workers or whatever it might be. And that takes the same kind of logistics and financial planning that any other business owner in any other community would need, with the added pressures and potentially benefits of the unique resources and opportunities that are out there just for diverse businesses and entrepreneurs like ourselves to be able to leverage capital and connections in our own community. No one looks out for us better than we do. So building that network, not just of advisors and guides and mentors, but also of people that can be opportunity models and role models for you personally and professionally, can be tremendously beneficial to your financial future. Being able to tie, I think LGBTQ people are also uniquely aware of that sort of ikigai concept of the thing you're good at, the thing you care about, and the thing that you do well, all being overlapping at the same time. We're able to seek out those opportunities because of some of our flexibility and our determination to succeed in the face of adversity, that allows us to fall into things that matter more to us than maybe they do to preconceived notions of what success looks like. So I encourage everyone out there to not only invest in themselves, but if possible, invest in the greater ecosystem for our community. There are venture capital funds just for LGBTQ people, like those at the Angels Network and through the Start Out Network and others. but even just being peer advisors to one another. Growing up, Matt, you and I had very few role models that weren't, Will and Jack on TV.
Right.
Now we've got CEOs and cabinet members and military leaders and Oscar winners and everyone in between to show us different paths. But we also have one another as corporate executives, as people working up their ladder, as public servants, to show you that anything is possible. And when you're able to leverage the fact that any opportunity is possible to us, that also means any financial future is possible if you plan right and plan with the right partner.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And, I think just again, one of those important lessons that we all need to learn as we go forward, because, it's something that at least I know in my life from a financial standpoint. I grew up, right smack dab in the, kind of, I guess, lower half of the middle class, probably. My dad worked in a factory. My mom was, before she retired, was a beautician, hairdresser, as we called them back in the day, and owned her own shop. She was an entrepreneur. She owned her own shop. So that, I had that sort of, upbringing or I guess influence around me as I was growing up. But, aside from that, like in school and everything, I didn't really learn a lot at all about finances or even how to balance a checkbook or write a check back in the day. Now we don't even use checks really,
right?
On very rare occasions. But, things like that I think could really be so helpful and could have set a lot of people up for better success, no matter who you are.
Yep.
And that's my spiel on the show each week is no matter who you are, where you come from, who you love, how you identify, or how much money you have, you deserve to have a retirement you can take pride in. And that's why the show is named what the show is. And so I think that's so important. And just
another element on that, Matt, too, if I may, I think it's something that needs to be said over and over again to remind folks sort of our obligation as we move up the ladder, both as a community and as individuals, is to throw the ladder down to pull others up with you. One of the most important things that happened in my time working at the Chamber of Commerce and in LGBT economic spaces was helping to close the underbanking and financial illiteracy gap that exists out there. Again, talking about the sort of difference between equality and equity, sure. Yes, all of us may be able to walk into a bank branch, but there is no federal credit protection for LGBTQ people stopping a bank owner in the Deep South or in the Midwest to say, we don't need to bank your kind. And knowing that there are not only ways to push back against that, but also ways to be planning with those who proactively have your back, the banks, the CDFIs, the community groups who want to work with people from their first, from their first minimum wage paycheck to their last cash out of their 401k and everything in between, to help them understand what just saving a small percentage every month can do for you as a cushion, what being able to invest in index funds that support our community can do for the greater good, that your dollar is so powerful, but most of us have no sense, especially early in our careers, just what to do. And again, one of our secret weapons, I think, in the fight is that, particularly for many of us like you and me, cisgendered white guys in a shirt and tie that can walk into just about any room and take a seat, means we have an obligation when we look left and look right and see no one like the rest of our community represented, saying, what are we doing for that? Why am I the token representative here when the majority of the people we're looking out for, particularly in the financial space, are racial minority, under 30, and have minimal access to resources, and yet none of them are here to hear about the incredible work that we're doing in those spaces. So all of us have an obligation, whether it's using, LinkedIn and social media or whatever it might be, being active in our ERGs, and then taking that information out to our communities, solving that last mile problem that these resources to help grow wealth and success in our community at whatever scale you want to achieve are out there. But finding them in New York City and San Francisco is quite different than trying to find them in Tupelo, Mississippi. And yet we are able to meet virtually like this, which means a inclusive, welcoming, knowledgeable support system is out there one click away.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's one of the things that I feel like is, speaking of, I was talking about earlier, little silver lining around the big dark cloud. Well, during COVID, this is, I think, the rise of virtual meetings and things like that. That was one of the silver linings around that big dark cloud, because now we have technology like the one that we're using today to really help people connect in a much easier way and in a much more personal way than before. And I think that's been something that has been fantastic to just help people have closer and easier access to resources, no matter where they might be in life. And really, speaking of that, I mean, are there any resources out there that you would recommend maybe for those LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs or small business owners, people who might want to start a business, to kind of ensure their, financial stability and their long-term success? What are some things out there that you might recommend to them?
Well, on an immediate practical level, seek help from the experts. You've got Start Out, you've got NGLCC, you've got Angels, you've got so many networks now focused on economic health, because that really is one of the most powerful tools we have, not only to fight back against the erosion of our own rights, but to build a future where we can fight for newer, stronger ones for us and everyone else. But also in this day and age, even with the attacks on DEI and corporate, et cetera, you're seeing particularly the financial institutions, the big banks, lean in and saying, just on the grounds of good CFO advice, we are not cutting out 15% of the American population just because somebody doesn't like them. That's just bad business. Add to that, it's even better when the entire national spectrum of businesses and communities is represented, for the diversity of ideas to invest in, the diversity of talent that we could potentially be hiring and sharing with one another. So do your homework. Look at the big banks, look at the large insurance companies, look at those who have had our back in the past, and look at what they're doing today through the various indexes that are out there and the websites that you could visit to see, is putting your money in the hands of an ally going to have real returns for you and our community, or is it just lip service? And, a real point of pride we should take in 2025 versus 1995 is that everyone wants a piece of the LGBTQ dollar. We're $917 plus billion in consumer power, but we're almost $2 trillion in GDP power as business owners and entrepreneurs. That is a heck of a lot of heft to throw around. And then when you find yourself potentially in a situation where you're underbanked or under-resourced and you can't get to what you need based on where you live, the internet is a big friendly place. And there are people who can have conversations as sort of frank as this, or as detailed as you could have with a certified financial planner who's an LGBTQ community expert, and everything in between. So leverage your community probably more than you ever have right now to find the good, find the resources, and find the ways to give back. By looking out for yourself with pride, you'll be able to invest countless dividends in our community for generations.
Love it. Well, just about a couple of minutes here left in our time, but I wanted to ask two quick questions just to close out. One being sort of kind of bouncing off of what you just mentioned there. You've worked very closely with government leaders, with corporate leaders, with other advocates in the LGBTQ plus community. Given the situation right now, what is there out there that gives you hope about LGBTQ plus economic equality going forward?
We're talking about it. One of my heroes and mentors and one of the greatest leaders in the LGBTQ movement was David Mixner, who unfortunately passed away about a year ago. And if you don't know him, Google David Mixner. You'll be blown away by what he's done for all of us and for all communities in America. But one of the things that he said and was quoted several times at his beautiful funeral was he was a devout Catholic and a gay man his whole life. And those things always seemed a bit incongruous. But the lesson he took away from that was the only sin I believe in is the sin of not doing something. And I think we as a community have to remember that whenever they are trying to silence us, whenever they're trying to other us or diminish us, that is our excuse to turn up the gas a little bit and shine the flame a bit brighter, because we've always been here. We're always going to be here. And in this moment, it's our visibility that's going to save us, and particularly young lives who might feel lost in this moment. So, it's one of the reasons I joke this flag sat on my desk in my government office, and I had people stick their heads in and go, I love seeing that. I've even had people stick their heads in and go, is that okay in this moment? I said, it's okay for me. And if for nothing else, it shows somebody walking down the hallway who might be too nervous to ever put a flag on their desk that I'm here thriving and at the most senior level of the federal government. And you can be too. Yeah. So whatever it is that you do in life, take pride in it, shine brightly, and you never know whose life you're going to save simply by existing.
That's so true and so powerful. I mean, you don't know the impact that you have on others just simply by being who you are and being proud of who you are, the way you are made, and the way that you can, have an impact on others, and just, maybe being a little bit more conscious of that impact can just make all the difference in the world, really.
Own it.
Yeah, just own it.
Or own who you are. Own what own the beauty of the community you're a part of. And I used to say this in countless workshops I've done with corporations over the years, where they ask, what is the right model of leadership? I said, it's the one that makes the difference. I don't care if you're at the front of the parade and doing the high kicks and carrying the banner, or you're just at the back waving and showing support as an ally. The important thing is that you showed up. So whatever that is to you, your life, your future, your community, showing up is the most important thing you can do, because if you feel deeply connected to whatever the outcome is, you'll give more. But the one thing we don't have the privilege of doing is staying quiet and staying in the shadows. Not right now, not ever.
This is very true. And just to kind of put a pin in things for this conversation, if there was one bit of, financial advice or career advice that you would give to someone just starting out, whether they're an entrepreneur or whether they're just a young person trying to figure out what in the world to do with their life career-wise or financially, is there anything that you would give to them as far as advice? Maybe one thing to just kind of stick a pin in here at the end of this conversation.
So I'll leave you with one more quote from another dear colleague who unfortunately passed too soon, Candace Waterman, who is one of the greatest allies, not just for LGBTQ people, for women, for people of color, for entrepreneurs of all kinds. And one of the things that she said that is on my desk here and forever ingrained in my heart, and I think this speaks particularly true of minorities and LGBTQ people: we didn't come this far to come this far. So wherever you are in your business, wherever you are in your personal journey, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're ready to take the next step forward, because this is not the end of your journey. You're just getting started.
That's fantastic. And I cannot think of a better way to close out this conversation. Jonathan Lovitz, thank you so much for taking time for me. I really do appreciate all of your insights. I've loved this conversation. Hopefully have you back sometime again here on the show.
Would be an honor. And to everyone watching, go get them. We've got your back, and we're proud of you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.